So our first common thread, the very first one that we share, is wounding. Can anybody submit that, yes, I've been wounded? Is anybody like, I have experienced no wounds? Sister, they're coming, don't worry. Don't worry, they're coming. Now, I want to be real clear that when I say wounding, I don't necessarily mean suffering. Because Scripture is clear that when we are walking with Christ, we can know that suffering is part of the equation. And suffering is something that God can redeem and use for His glory and our good if we'll let Him. But a lot of times our suffering comes about as a result of wounding. I want to give you the definition of a wound so that we know what we're talking about. A wound is an injury to living tissue caused by a cut, blow, or other impact, typically causing damage to underlying tissues. Now, that's the scientific definition of a wound from the dictionary, but I think it applies, don't you? Injury to living tissue, that's you, by a cut, and some of them are deep. A blow, that would just be if you just got socked in the face, yeah? Or other impact, typically causing damage to underlying tissue. So even once that initial wound heals, there's underlying tissue damage, right? This is true in my life, and my story that I've been kicking and screaming against for several years now is one of wounding. And my story is one of wounding via words. So I think in believers' lives, a lot of wounds come via words. I think we throw words around left and right, not realizing the power that they wield. But for me, it's words. I'll give you a couple of examples. When I was about 18 years old, I was madly in love with this guy at church. He was like the music pastor, and we went to a Southern Baptist church, so there were not worship leaders. He was like the associate pastor of worship, arts, and sanctuarial auditoriumness. You know, I mean, it was very, and so, I mean, he did this, right? And I was like, oh, swoon, you know. Well, he wanted to spend all his time with me. Duh. So we spent tons of time together. I was convinced that we were probably going to get married because I was 18. It was time. And so I prayed, God, if it would be your will, because of course I want your will, could you please have him fall in love with me and carry me away, and we will spend our days whiling away in music and thrillingness and romance. And so he started spending a lot of time with me, and I was like, what? Prayer works. I support it. I recommend it. Pray, you know. And then he got a girlfriend, but he still wanted to spend all his time with me, and then she was gone, of course, because I was the one, so I don't know what all this was. So he got another girlfriend, and I was like, well, this is weird, but whatever. Everyone in our college department was in love with him also. So he was one of those, right? So we were on a college trip to go and sing for people and minister to them through worship and the word. And we all had matching dresses with bows. And we would stand like this and we would sing, and he'd be over there, and I'm not sure exactly who I was worshiping in that moment, but you know what I'm saying. And so we got back on the bus, and it was a particularly wonderful time, and all these girls started crowding around him. And of course he was sitting with me because he wanted to spend all his time with me because I was fun. And so he was sitting with me, and these girls gathered around, and they batted their eyelashes, and they said, called him by name, which I won't do in case he ever sees this video. So-and-so, what kind of wife do you want? And he said, I want a Proverbs 31 woman. And they were like, am I a Proverbs 31 woman? And he was like, oh, you might be. Am I a Proverbs? I mean, down the line. Of course, I am gagging at the patheticness. So I, with dripping sarcasm and disdain, said, oh, and touched him on the arm because he was sitting with me, not them. Am I a Proverbs 31 woman? And he said, no, but I wouldn't want you to change. What? And I was like, you talk about wound. 18 years old. I don't know where to place that nonsense. I go home to my dad and I'm all, Dad, so-and-so said I wasn't a Proverbs 31 woman. He was like, he probably doesn't even know what a Proverbs 31 woman is. You know, sweet dad. And I was just like, but I'll never recover. You know, horrific. But you know what? That was a wound. I can look back now on Facebook and see that I never wanted to be with him because he had not aged well. Just saying, as God's sovereignty would have it. So I had prayed that God would help me find a man who could either sing or play an instrument. Did y'all see what just happened over here? Okay, so I did okay. But that was a wound. And you know what? It stopped being about him after a while, and it started being about the fact that I was not a Proverbs 31 woman. And the enemy has camped on that for 20 years.